The reason so many guitar players struggle to solo is because they think it requires natural talent, which is the kind of thing that you're born with and that only a blessed few are lucky to have. I used to think this, and I've never considered myself naturally talented, but I've struggled through learning to solo and I've come out on the other side. In this video, I'm going to discuss the hidden real reason guitar players struggle to solo, and I'm going to show you 3 steps you can take to overcome this and improvise over any song you like. This is how to solo even if you're not creative. So like I mentioned before, there's a difference between the real reason guitar players struggle to solo and the reason they think they struggle to solo. Usually the latter has something to do with natural talent, or sometimes it's called natural creativity, and it's talked about as if it's some flavor of divine inspiration. And look, maybe that exists or maybe it doesn't, but for all of us who haven't won the musical genetic lottery, I want to talk about the real reason that 98+% of guitar players struggle to solo, and that is what's called the paradox of choice. The paradox of choice is sort of a conundrum of human decision making that says that the more options you have, the harder it is to make a decision. And counterintuitively, the fewer options you have, the easier it is to make a decision. To give you a quick example, it's easier to pick your favorite color out of like 3 options than it is, say, 20 options. So the question is then, how does this apply to guitar and soloing? When guitar players sit down to take a solo and they have over 100 possible places they could put their hand on the guitar, they might as well be staring into an abyss with no options at all. Soloing and improvising, which is what we call it when you make a solo up on the spot, is awesome because it allows you a lot of creative freedom and you can kind of make whatever musical statement you want to make, but that's also what makes it really hard. A lot of times that feeling of being frozen by having too many options manifests itself in the way of feeling lost. It's like you don't even know what you don't know what to look up, so you end up looking up really generic things like how to solo or how to start soloing. So in order to help you feel less lost, I'm going to give you 3 steps you can take to overcome this feeling, and it'll give you a roadmap of things that you should learn in order to be able to solo. So before I break down the steps point by point, I want to introduce a metaphor that I'm going to carry throughout the rest of this video and that'll help you kind of think about soloing. And that is, you should think about soloing the same way you would think about telling a story. Solo should have a beginning, middle, and end, and a definite climax. And just like any good story, there should be a couple of plot twists, betrayal, love and loss, wacky hijinks, and even fan-favorite guest stars like Darth Vader and the Fonz. Maybe Okay, I got a little carried away there, and if any of you steal my screenplay idea, I will sue you into the ground. But the metaphor still stands. Think about playing a guitar solo the same way you think about telling a story. They say that music is a language, so if you're going to use this language to tell a story, we got to start at the very beginning and lay the foundations. You have to learn the musical equivalent of the alphabet, which makes step 1, learn scales. Learning scales is going to do a couple of things for you. First and most importantly, it's going to cut out a ton of options. Remember, most guitar players get paralyzed by having too many options. So if you're restricted to only using the notes in a scale, soloing is going to become a lot easier immediately. The first scale that guitar players should learn is the first position minor pentatonic scale. I'll have a video linked in the description where I teach that scale, but then once you got that one down, you want to move on to the other 4 positions of the pentatonic scale, and then the diatonic modes, and then like exotic scales if you're into that, if that's relevant to your style. But the important thing is to not get bogged down in this. Remember, soloing is a skill that's bigger than just scales. So long as you know that first position pentatonic scale, you're more than qualified to go ahead and start learning to solo. So in this point in the musical language, you understand the alphabet. You were a baby communicating with random noises and grunts and stuff, and now you know actual letters. But that's still not words. If you're going to tell a story, you've got to learn words and phrases. And the musical equivalent of this is step 2, learn other guitar players' solos. Pick some guitar players you love and learn some of their solos. This is going to help you build your musical vocabulary. By learning their solos, you're going to pick up on their riffs and licks and runs and some of their musical mannerisms, and you'll be able to incorporate that into your own playing. Now you might say, hey Kevin, that sounds like stealing. To which I would say, you're exactly right. This is stealing. But this isn't necessarily a bad thing. You know, they say that good artists copy and great artists steal. And if you think about language again, when you were first learning to speak, your first words were just made up by other people. So if you've got to steal from somebody, you might as well steal from your favorite players, because that's how you build your own style. When you learn the solos of guitar players that you admire, like I said, you're going to be able to pick up on their musical mannerisms and incorporate that into your own unique voice. I'll give you an example. Two of my favorite guitar players are Mark Knopfler and Eric Clapton. So if I learn a lot of Clapton and Knopfler solos, and I sort of mix their voices together, what'll emerge is a new thing that's unique to me. This is literally how everybody builds their own style, including Clapton and Knopfler. Now this video isn't really a tutorial as much as it is a discussion of concepts, but I do want to get out my guitar and show you something that'll help you apply this in your playing. So learning licks and phrases from your favorite guitar players is one thing. Being able to replicate those in your own solo is kind of a different thing. I'm going to show you how to bridge that gap. For this example, I'm going to use the A minor pentatonic scale here on the 5th fret. And I'm going to use this phrase that Mark Knopfler plays all the time. That's a really standard blues phrase. You hear that all the time. And really quickly, the way that you play it is by bending the 7th fret on the G string up about half a step. And then by making a bar with your first finger on the B and E strings on the 5th fret. So the way you learn that phrase without it just floating out in space all by itself is by understanding its context within the scale. So like I said before, we're using the A minor pentatonic scale. I'm going to play the top 3 strings of that scale for you. You can see that when I play that lick, this note, the one that you're bending, that's in the A minor pentatonic scale, and so are these. Those notes are also both in the scale. This is a really deep subject, and I'll probably do a full video on this at some point. And like I said, this video isn't really so much of a tutorial. I just want you to understand that that's how you apply these licks that you learn to your own playing. You have to understand their context within a scale. The one last point I want to make on this topic is that you'll get more out of learning one solo and learning every last minute detail of that solo than you will by kind of learning 10 solos. When it comes to learning solos and learning songs in general, you definitely want to go for quality over quantity. If you learn 2 or 3 solos from guitar players you really admire, you'll have more than enough musical vocabulary to take an awesome solo and tell your musical story. Which brings us to the third and final step. This is another restrictive step, so we're going to be putting in place constraints to help counteract the paradox of choice here. This step will really make a very significant difference in your ability to solo. The third step is to learn to play on guitar the melody of the song that you're soloing over. If you don't know, the melody is kind of the primary musical line in the song. It's the part that you hum in your head. In contemporary music, it's usually the music behind what the singer is singing, just without the words. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Those were lyrics. That was a melody. You see the difference. To go back to our story metaphor, playing the melody is going to kind of give you a musical plot line to follow. It's a great line to play off of, and if you ever can't think of a good solo, just playing the melody is a decent solo all by itself. The other good reason you should learn to play the melody on guitar is because it allows you to kind of capture the overall musical mood, or maybe the musical tone of the song in your solo. Great guitar solos are not just breaks from the song where we all admire how awesome the guitar player is and how good they are at playing the guitar. Great guitar solos expand on the musical idea that's already been presented in the song. If we're thinking about writing a story, it's important to acknowledge that in a solo, you have to build on what the song is already presented, so you kind of have to write in another author's voice, so to speak. Playing the melody on guitar in your solo is an easy way to do this. So it's simple, but it'll really elevate your solos. Now to demonstrate this stuff, I'm going to solo over a chord progression that's inspired by Knockin' on Heaven's Door by Bob Dylan. The reason for that is because between the Bob Dylan and the Guns N' Roses version, everybody knows the melody of this song, so you'll be able to recognize that when I play that. And also, it's an easy melody to play, and the chord progression is easy to play. So this song is really good if you're trying to practice soloing. The scale that you would use to solo over this song is the E minor pentatonic scale, which I'll be playing up on the 12th fret. The first time around, I'm just going to play the melody, and after that, I'm going to start riffing on it and kind of soloing, incorporating some of those licks, but still kind of using the melody as a structure to stick to. Alright, I'm going to give this a shot. So now you know the real reason that most guitar players struggle to solo, and you can kind of see how those steps build on each other to give you a framework for how to solo on guitar, even if you haven't been blessed by some mystical ancient council of guitar wizards who bestow inspiration onto a lucky few. And the big secret of this video is that even if you are naturally talented, this is still how you learn to solo. Thank you for watching.